Hello, sports fans, and welcome to Let Me Speak, the show that shares sports' biggest headlines explained, uninterrupted, and maybe a little audacious. I'm Joe Braverman, and today's topics we'll be discussing are: will the NBA Finals be set by the time we hit Memorial Day weekend? Plus, how the Tampa Bay Lightning made it to yet another conference finals. And what to expect with Colin Kaepernick's workout with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's episode 74 of Let Me Speak, and it starts right now. Hello once again, everybody, here on Thursday, May 26th, 2022, episode number 74. 74 episodes of Let Me Speak. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in wherever you are getting this podcast. I hope everyone for this upcoming weekend has a very happy and safe Memorial Day weekend, the unofficial start of summer. And I know around here, I am tired of 50-degree temperatures and 60 degree. I'm looking for the ideal temperature of sunny and 75. That way, instead of sleeping in my bed after my overnight shifts over at WEEI radio, I can take my naps on the beach, which would be ideal. That would be the ideal situation for me. So I'm very much looking forward to Memorial Day weekend. Whatever you are doing, if you're lighting up the grill with some family or hitting the ocean with your friends, hope you do it safely, and maybe you'll use this podcast as something to listen to. Get your fill of sports in and time again. I am going to apologize out front if I seem a little groggy and coming off of the back half of a cold a little bit. We're almost there. Sinuses, I'd say, are about 80% clear right now, so we're not fully out of it yet, but there might be a couple of times here and there I got to clear my throat, get a little cough in there. So I'm going to apologize for that if that disrupts the podcast at all. But also my throat has been a little sore from cheering for the Boston Celtics, obviously, with the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference Finals getting fully underway. And we are getting close to the end. We are very, very close to the end. And at the bare minimum, by Sunday, the East Finals will come to an end. And by Monday, the West Finals will come to an end. That's what I believe. Yes. So because tonight is game 5 between Warriors and Mavs, and it's every other day. So the NBA Finals will get started, though, a week from today. So we will have a full preview of the NBA Finals on next week's episode. But let's start with the here and the now and talk about the conference finals. Starting in the East with the Heat and the Celtics, I think, this has probably been one of the more unique series that I can remember in a very, very long time. I mean, from my personal knowledge, the way the series has gone, I'd compare it to probably 2018, the East Conference Finals between Celtics and Cavs, when it was basically, each home team won by double digits each time. It was competitive, but I don't think it was anywhere close to what this series is. I mean, this series has been blowout city between these two. I mean, each team has led by 20, at least 20 in each game. So it's not like you can say, oh, one team has the advantage over another, because it's almost like whoever has the fewest amount of poor stretches is going to win that game. And last night, it turned out to be the Celtics having a 24-2 run in that third quarter and into the fourth that gave them the advantage. But to look at both teams, and we'll get into more of the Celtics a little bit later when we get into Let's Get Local. But just overall between the two, I thought it was going to be more competitive just because I thought both teams were so evenly matched. But Miami everyone's been banged up in this series. There's injuries on both sides, but I just think I think right now Miami is just too banged up to hang around. I mean, they've got basically half of their rotation dealing with injuries right now. You got Jimmy Butler with a knee injury. Kyle Lowry's dealing with a hammy. Tyler Hero's been out with a groin for the last 2 games. Max Strus is hurting. PJ Tucker's hurting. And then the guys who are healthy and who don't have any kind of injury problems or have had injury history recently just aren't getting it done. I mean, look at, Max Strus. I put him on the list, but he's 0 of 16 in the last 2 games. This was a guy, me personally, I was singing the praises. I thought he was absolutely huge for what Miami did up to this point. And, Gabe Vincent isn't hitting the tough shots. Duncan Robinson seems nowhere to be found as compared to his first couple of years with Miami. That's just what I'm seeing with the Heat on that side of things. And honestly, like aside from the injuries too, I just think they're getting away from what made them a really good team. Now they do have some good knockdown shooters. And then we saw it in the regular season when they were able to balance it out. But I think in this series in particular, what helps them so much is having Bam Adebayo be that focal point. I mean, look at game 3 in this series. Bam Adebayo was not shying away at all from being aggressive and getting into the paint. He put up 31 points and 10 rebounds, but those 31 points came on 22 shots. He had 22 shots individually in that game. Over the past 2 games, game 4 and 5, a combined total of 20 shots. So he took more shots in one game than he has in the past 2 games combined. And you look at the paint, they have the advantage. Clearly, in offensive rebounds last night, they were 19-6 in advantage. And then they still continued to go to the 3-point line. They were 7 of 45, hoping something would strike. So that poor first quarter that we saw in game 4 eventually carried over into the third quarter of game 5 last night. So I don't know what Miami was doing with not going to Bam Adebayo. I don't know if it's, Eric Spoelstra's strategy or if it's just Bam himself not taking into account for himself. Because, in game 3, Robert Williams didn't play. Now Robert Williams is in the lineup and Bam seems to just back out and doesn't want anything to do with that because he has the fear of it getting rejected. You put along Al Horford with being a tough physical body against him. So I don't know what's going on with Bam Adebayo, but for the Heat to stay in this series, Adebayo's got to get more aggressive. And I think that's where the offense should start and where it should end. Because Jimmy Butler is not taking the shots that we've seen him normally take. He's not taking threes. He would much rather get to the basket than sort of go for these mid-range kind of things. And that's sort of playing into the Celtics' hands defensively. The fact that they're giving him the space and they're sort of they know what's happening. They know Tucker likes to hang into the corner and then drive it to the middle. They know that Robinson and Strus and Vincent want to shoot. They know Lowry is struggling offensively, so it's playing into the Celtics' hands. And if that continues, then this game and this series is going to be over by Friday night, and the Celtics are going to clinch on their home court, which honestly, that's what I am predicting between these two teams. I think the series is going to end by Friday. The Celtics are going to lock it up just because I think they're the better team. And really, I'll dive into it more, as I said, but the Celtics just shoot themselves in the foot. And you could arguably say that this should be a sweep or at least a 5-game series. Because you look at game 1, you take away that third quarter, you take away the first quarter of game 3, and this Celtic team could be up, 3-1 at the minimum. And the series should be over by today. But I think the Celtics, I think they're going to win the series. I think they've smartened up. They finally won back-to-back games when they needed to. They did it in last series against the Bucks. They're doing it this series. And I think having the home court, the Garden, as I said last week, the Garden is one of the loudest places. I was there firsthand. One of the loudest places to play a playoff game, regardless if it's a hockey game or a basketball game or whatever it is. So I like the Celtics to end this series by Friday. The Celtics are going to finish off the Heat. They're going to get to the NBA Finals for the first time in 12 years. But NBA Finals, we'll have to see who they're playing up against, because we could have the other series in the West end by the time this episode comes out, with Golden State being up 3-1 over the Dallas Mavericks right now. And just looking at game 4 from the other night, I didn't really see a sense of urgency really from the Warriors in game 4 in Dallas. I mean, you had Steph Curry, who was the leading scorer with 20 points. They just were kind of a little reckless and careless with the ball. Klay Thompson had 12. Andrew Wiggins had 13. It looked like there was really no, as I say, sense of urgency. And there was no one on the sideline sort of saying, oh, we should end this sweep. We should end it in a sweep right then and there. There was no real panic for when it got to the second quarter and the Mavericks started to get hot offensively. There was no one really looking, oh boy, we really got to try and turn things around. The Warriors know that they have 4 games to work with, and all they got to do is win one of them. But tonight's going to be very, very important for Golden State, because then if they don't win, the 3-1 comebacks are going to start creeping into their head a little bit. Obviously, everyone knows the 3-1 comeback by Cleveland in the 16 finals team. And that core of Curry, Thompson, and Green were all a part of it. So they know that they don't want those things sort of creeping back in. So I think they have to win tonight to lock up this series. I would still favor them over these next couple of games, but I think part of it is that you have to try and dominate the paint. That's how they played so well at the beginning of the series. Is Kevon Looney, who would have thought he would have been the most integral part of this series? I mean, look at game 1 and game 2, the fact that they were able to dominate the paint because no one on the Mavericks had the physical presence or the size that Kevon Looney provides. Now, is Looney going to give you that for, 40 minutes out of the game? No, but just his presence alone opens the door up and spaces the floor for Wiggins to come out and put up another 30, Thompson and Curry to shoot very well, Jordan Poole coming off the bench. I think just the presence alone helps them out. But for Dallas, on Dallas's side of things, it goes back to what we said in the Phoenix series that they have to do. Luka Doncic is a scoring machine. He can take the bulk of that offense. I mean, look at what he's done in this series so far. He's averaging 33 points on 43% field goal shooting, over 9 rebounds, and 6 assists in these first 4 games. But it's everyone else around him. Exactly what Jason Kidd said is that at the beginning of the series against Phoenix for Dallas was that someone else other than Luka Doncic has to join the party. And, we saw that in game 4 with Dorian Finney-Smith putting up 13, Reggie Bullock putting in 18. Spencer Dinwiddie came off the bench with, I think, 14 points. So it's consistent scoring. It's not just, 3 guys in 20 points. The scoring has to be spread out, thoroughly. That means Maxi Kleber's got to put in double digits. Davis Bertans has got to put in double digits. Jalen Brunson obviously has to continue his hot offense in the postseason so far. And not only that, but I think they've sort of got to stray away from the 3-pointer. Because, I mean, yeah, they shot great in game 4. They were 20 of 43. But you're not going to make 23-pointers every single game. You're not going to make 20 every single time. So it's a matter of spreading out the scoring and finding different ways to score. And, can Dallas do it? Honestly, I don't think so. I think Golden State is going to end this series. I think they're going to end it tonight. And by the time this episode comes out, the series will have already been over, and we will see a Golden State Warriors finals appearance once again. I know it's becoming like a broken record, but I mean, it's only been since 2019 that they've been in the NBA finals. So it hasn't been too long, but it has felt like an eternity considering how frequent they went, with those 5 straight years. So Those are my predictions. I'm predicting that before the Memorial Day weekend even gets started, before we get into Saturday, I think we will see ourselves with a Golden State and Boston NBA Finals matchup. But regardless of what happens, I'm looking forward to at least seeing some competitive games and seeing some fight between the Final Four teams vying for the championship. With the playoffs and look at the NHL, because the semifinals and the Stanley Cup playoffs are in full swing. And honestly, those are the ones that are most compelling, considering the series in the NBA right now is just blowout between those two. So let's get into the semifinals and talk about the team first. That was the first to qualify for the conference finals, and that was the Tampa Bay Lightning. Once again, they're in the conference finals as they make easy work of the Florida Panthers in a 4-game sweep. And when you look at each game, it was fairly easy for Tampa, I would say. But I think, I say it week after week about Tampa is that they just have a ton of championship experience. They've got guys who have been here before, with Kucherov and Stamkos and Maroon and Palat, everybody. But the MVP I'm saying of this past series was Andrei Vasilevskiy. Vasilevskiy was huge for Tampa in this series. Absolutely huge. I mean, look at what he did in the 4 games for Tampa in this series. You know how many goals he allowed in 4 games? 3. 3 goals allowed in 4 games, a .981 save percentage. So it's not like the Panthers weren't getting shots up at all. They were still attacking. Vasilevskiy was just right there holding his ground. So I give my MVP trophy in that series to Vasilevskiy, and I think he's going to be huge depending on who Tampa plays in the Eastern Conference Finals, whether that be Carolina or New York. I think he's going to be absolutely huge. But then on the other side for the Panthers, I mean, this was the number 1 team overall, but they just couldn't sustain their starts. I said coming in to the playoffs that the defense was going to be a little, susceptible. This is a team that can score, but when they don't score, are they going to be able to stop anybody? They had their struggles with the Capitals in the first series, and then obviously getting swept here. So I think they gotta find some more defenders in the off season. They gotta find some more defenders, someone who can really attack in the blue line and in the neutral zone. Because we know they have the offense. We know for sure. And then just, they got to learn to play a consistent 60 minutes. They couldn't sustain the starts. They could put 1 or 2 up on the board, but that doesn't mean the game is totally over. You got to continue to find those insurance goals and don't let Tampa try and get back into this series. But I give full credit to the Lightning for once again making it back to the conference finals. And now it's just kind of a wait and see. Would I call them the favorites right now? I would call them the favorites in the East. Depending on looking at the next series that we're going to talk about, the Hurricanes and the Rangers, considering the way those two are playing. But I think it's going to be really tight, whoever it is. But at this moment, it's kind of like saying Tampa or the field. And I still put my money on the field to win the Stanley Cup, but to represent the East, I would now favor Tampa. To be totally honest, I just think they have a lot of experience. They've been here before, and they know how to turn on the gas when it comes to postseason play. So I like what the Lightning are going to do. I do like them a lot over either Carolina or New York, as I said, because it's basically the same script for the Hurricanes that they had in their Bruins series. Now with the Rangers series, they win the first 2 at home, then they get totally outmatched on the road. But in this series, because I'm not going to say it's going to be the exact same thing that the Hurricanes did against the Bruins in their series, because I think the difference between the Rangers and the Bruins is that New York has a stronger defensive pairing, all down their lines. And really the one guy you could look at is Adam Fox. I think he's a great defender, obviously. He can shut down in the neutral zone and he can block shots, but he can also score. So I think when you have a two-way player like that on the defense, I think that's a big advantage for the Rangers. And obviously they got to win one on the road. And whoever wins one on the road is going to have the major advantage. But again, like I talked about the goalie for Tampa, I got to talk about the goalie for New York. Igor Shesterkin has basically put his performance against the Penguins in the rearview mirror. And you take away the 2 games in Carolina, he's only allowed 2 goals each in those road games. So it's not like he's had a totally horrible series. It's just New York has a hard time scoring on the road. So I think Shesterkin, not compared to the previous series, I think you don't got to worry about him at all against Carolina because he's going to limit the Hurricanes as much as he can. All New York has to do is just find different ways to score. Not necessarily at home because they're totally fine at home in Madison Square Garden, but they got to do it on the road. Someone's got to go on the road and win a game. And I think whoever does that is going to have a huge advantage. And obviously it plays into Carolina, the fact that they have home ice, because if it goes to a game 7, then it will be on their home ice. It'll be on their home ice. So they could totally say, oh, all we got to do is just play our best at home. But for New York, I think they have it is 2-2 now. They got to win. I think they got to win tonight. I think tonight is absolutely huge if the Rangers want to win this series. Similar to Dallas in the NBA. They got to win on the road and they got to get the series more competitive than it has been because it's essentially, a tale of 2 teams. And it says more about the Hurricanes than it does about the Rangers. The fact that they're basically 2 different teams when they play on their home ice versus on someone else's ice. So I think if the Rangers can win tonight, I will favor them to win this series because Hurricanes haven't won a single game on the road. And they're supposed to be a top 2 team seeding wise in the Eastern Conference. So, that's kind of a wait and see for me on Carolina's side of things. I'm not fully sold on them yet if they can even get to the Stanley Cup if they get out of this series. Because, Tampa is just as good a road team as they are a home team. So we'll have to see what happens between those 2. But let's shift over to the West. And I think maybe one of the more compelling series all postseason has been Colorado and St. Louis. And obviously last night you had drama everywhere with the Avalanche leading 3-0 and then losing 5-4 in overtime. And honestly, if you ask me, the series should have ended. It should have ended last night against St. Louis. It should have been 4-1, and we'd be talking about Colorado being in the Western Conference Finals. But obviously, the headline has been about no Jordan Binnington. Obviously, if you've seen the video, it's Nazem Kadri running into him, and now Jordan Binnington is out for the entire series for St. Louis. And, I'm sorry for all of you who are St. Louis Blues fans, but there is nothing dirty about what Kadri did to Jordan Binnington. When you look at the video, he and the defender, I believe it's Perrin, are both going at the puck, and they both kind of, Perrin, he didn't give him an intentional bump, but he just kind of knocked him off his course, and that led Kadri into Binnington, and he just couldn't stop himself, essentially. So sorry, Blues fans out there. Stop with the racist comments. Stop with the death threats to Nazem Kadri. Is he a dirty player? Yes, he is, but there was nothing dirty about that play. That just annoys the heck out of me. The fact that, one unintentional thing happened, and all of a sudden someone's getting death threats. Okay. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And whoever did that, whoever made those comments and those death threats should be ashamed. Absolutely ashamed of themselves. But talking about the play on the ice, I just see too much scoring on Colorado's side of things. That's what I see. They are just a dominating presence on the ice. I give credit though to St. Louis for hanging around. That's what I'm gonna give total credit to, because this is a St. Louis team, as I've said a while back, is only 3 years removed from a Stanley Cup. So they have this championship mindset, and they're not going to go away quietly. I don't think anyone expected that. But I think at home, it's going to be absolutely huge for St. Louis to win this game, obviously, because their season's on the line. But if they get it to a game 7, like we saw in their previous series, you get it to sort of a winner take all kind of situation, where the favorite has their backs against the wall and they play on their heels, that favors the Blues. So I don't see it happening, though. I just think the Avalanche with McKinnon and all those guys on Colorado, I just think it's too much. It's too much for St. Louis to overcome. And I think the loss of Binnington hurts, because I think when Binnington's on his game, he's probably a top 10 goalie in the NHL. But the problem is you don't have him. And I don't see St. Louis sort of sticking around with the Avalanche. They did get 5 out of it, including in that overtime win. But are they going to be able to do that every game? I don't think that's possible. So just keeping up the scoring gives me, it gives me a reason to believe that Colorado will win their game and win this series, get themselves to the conference finals. But the last series, you save the best for last, the Battle of Alberta between the Flames and the Oilers. I mean, it's exactly what you think it would have been. Just intensity, competitive, two teams just going right at each other. And I think it's been very, very entertaining. Very entertaining. And I believe it is Edmonton with a 3-1 advantage right now over the Flames. Similar to Colorado, I just think they have too many scoring weapons. And I think, I do like the Oilers as an overall favorite to come out of the West, because you already have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Those two are scoring machines. But look at everyone else who's contributing for the Oilers. Evander Kane has 5 goals in the last 2 games. He's been a wrecking crew. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scored twice last night for the Oilers in the previous game. I think they do have to try, Calgary that is, they have to try and match every high scoring period Edmonton has, because that's how they won game 1, and B, that's what it's going to take, because the Oilers once every game put up 2 or 3. They just have one high scoring period that the Flames have got to try and match. And it doesn't matter where it comes from, but the fact is they've got to keep it close. They can't let the game get away. If it's within 2 throughout the whole 60 minutes, then they're good. Because a team like this who gets that lead, you know a team like the Edmonton Oilers are just going to continue to pound the puck into the net. And honestly, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think if the Oilers do get out of this series, I would favor them in the conference finals and for them to get to the Stanley Cup. I think between them and either the Avalanche or the Blues, that's what I think. But we're still talking about the conference finals here. Okay. There's still tons of twists and turns still to come before we get down to the Final Four. Now, outside of the playoffs, there's still so much more to talk about in the sports world. So let's get into it rapid fire style with this week's edition of Quick Hits. And we start in the NFL with Colin Kaepernick getting a workout for the first time since 2017. And who is the team working them out? The Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders hosted Kaepernick earlier in the week, and there are talks about what will happen now that Kaepernick worked out with the Raiders. Now, I'm the first one to say that Kaepernick should still be in the NFL to this day. I don't care if he's on the bench or a backup or a third string. I don't care. The fact that he got blackballed by Roger Goodell in the NFL was absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. And it's now taken 5 years for someone to say, let's take away the social justice side of things. The fact that he almost put our league in a downfall. He's a good player. He's a good quarterback. I mean, this is a guy who led the 49ers to the Super Bowl in his rookie year. He overtakes Alex Smith, and he leads the 49ers to a Super Bowl. Now, for those of you who are big fans of Kaepernick, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't really see much coming out of this. Not really. I mean, first off, the guy is 34 years old. When you get past 30, that's the danger zone for most quarterbacks, if it starts that downward trajectory. Another thing is that he hasn't played competitive football in 6 years. He hasn't played in a game since 2016 with the 49ers. He didn't go to the CFL, or he didn't play in the XFL or the USFL. Hasn't played competitive football at all. And on top of that, he won't have that sort of same explosiveness that he had. You remember a guy, when he was with the 49ers, he had the size and he could run, he was right up there with Cam Newton in terms of speed and those long strides that he had. So I don't think he's going to have the same explosiveness. And then also when you look at the depth chart that the Raiders have, you already have Nick Mullins and Jarrett Stidham to back up Derek Carr. So, unless Mullins or Stidham possibly gets hurt, then you could see a possible signing, but I really don't see anything coming out of Kaepernick's workout with the Raiders. Sticking though in the NFL, we had voluntary OTAs begin for most teams this past week, and everyone wants to talk about who's there and who's not there. First off, let's not go crazy. These are voluntary OTAs, and it feels like we have this conversation year after year after year about who's not there and who is there. Guess what? Guys don't have to go, and they don't have any problems at all, But of course, this year's list of absences includes Deebo Samuel, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, of course, Deebo with the trade request, and then contract extension talks between Jackson and the Ravens, and Murray and the Cards. Listen, let's not read into too much about this, okay? Voluntary OTAs, that does not mean they're not going to be committed at all. They will be committed by the time we get to mandatory minicamp. That's the key word, mandatory, okay? Let's not overreact. So anyone who wants to create a story out of this, yes, there are some disagreements, but eventually when that time comes around, the players will be there for their team. Back to the world of golf, and the PGA Championship started off a little slow. Everyone struggled with the conditions down there in Oklahoma with the wind and the rain, but in the end, it was Justin Thomas who won the PGA Championship in what I would call a spectacular fashion. This is a dude who trailed by 7 strokes entering the final day of play on Sunday. 7 strokes he had to make up in what is a very difficult course, as I said, when you add on the elements brought on by Mother Nature. The fact that he was probably the best consistent golfer on Sunday, and that he won his first PGA Championship, or I should say his first major since the 2017 PGA Championship, when he got it to a 3-hole playoff with Will Zalatoris. He was able to win it over those 3 holes. But of course, the second big story out of that is the collapse by Mito Pereira. I mean, it was an absolutely horrific tumble on the 18th. When you look at that video right off the drive, I mean, it just did not look pretty at all. He had a 1-stroke lead. He throws in a double bogey on the last hole and doesn't even make it to the playoff, okay? The drive was horrible when you look at the video. He was completely off balance. That thing was slicing like my tee shot. And he was on his front feet. He knew it right off the bat that it was just horrible. He went right into the creek. He had to drop and hit his 3rd. And when you see the structure of that hole, when you see the overlay of it, that's a hole you want to stay left at, because when you go to the right, you got to try and hook it, and that's what Pereira had to do when he was at the right. He tried to hook it, and then his shot went on the green, but it was way, way, way off, and it eventually fell off of the green. And then when he had to chip it, it didn't break right, left to right, and it goes all the way off the green. So, I mean, it was a collapse by Pereira, but credit to Thomas for a comeback that most golf fans will remember. In the world of baseball, this week's segment is about the Yankees, the top team in baseball. Unfortunately, gets a big loss with Giancarlo Stanton landing on the injured list with an ankle injury. It's the 10-day IL, thank goodness, for Yankee fans. But this is just Stanton's legacy. He's a boomer bust player who always gets hurt. And I mean, he continues to put up monster numbers, former MVP when he was with the Marlins. And since he's been to New York, he's been a home run and a strikeout guy. That's all it's been. He has these towering shots, but then he also strikes out 4 or 5 times. And that's really been the downfall for Stanton pretty much all his entire career. Now this year, he's been great. He has been great for the Yankees. Him and Judge as that combo, I mean, they're both top 5 right now in home runs and in RBIs. So, I mean, those two are the main focal points as to why the Yankees have the best record in baseball right now at 31-13. But if Stanton continues to have these injury problems, where does that leave Aaron Judge? Because he's not going to carry this thing on his own. Absolutely not. Donaldson's not the same hitter. LeMahieu's not the same hitter. The lineup is great for the Yankees, but we know that it runs through Stanton. It runs through Judge. So if Stanton can't stay healthy for at least, I would probably say $140 if he's healthy and can play, then the Yankees are probably in a good spot. But other than that, New York's just got to find different ways to win, and it's got to be without him. Finally, sticking in the New York suburb, that kind of area, we go to basketball, and the headline off of the NBA Conference Finals is that the Nets are unwilling to offer Kyrie Irving a long-term extension. Now, I just want to speak for every fan who's not a fan of Kyrie Irving and say, duh, of course you don't want to offer him a long-term extension. Look at what's happened over the last year with Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. We even heard from Sean Marks, the GM, says he wants guys who are committed. And Kyrie Irving has yet to be a committed guy to anybody on his whole career. He didn't commit to Cleveland when the going got tough. He didn't commit to Boston when he had to be a leader. And he hasn't committed to Brooklyn. He'd rather stay on his own morals and his own ego rather than contribute for the team. He put his own personal agenda ahead of the team. And that just shows me again how important locker room culture means. It means much more than people think. You can have talented players, but if you don't have a locker room that's connected and a culture that's positive, then there's no shot that you win or even have championship aspirations. So that was the downfall of Brooklyn last year. The fact that so many guys, including Kyrie, had pieces coming in and out. And until Kyrie Irving says, yes, I'm committed, and he demonstrates that, then I don't see anyone offering him a long-term extension. So the report that the Nets are unwilling to offer an extension does not surprise me in the least bit. And that is a wrap-up on this week's edition of Quick Hits. Time once again for our Let's Get Local segment of the week. And as I said last week, we've got a special bonus episode coming out that regards our Let's Get Local segment. So everyone keep your eyes and ears posted. Hopefully within the next week or so, we can make a formal announcement on what exactly the bonus episode is. But again, keep your eyes and ears posted. We've got a special bonus episode coming out. Getting back to this segment in particular, of course, everyone in Boston is so excited about the Celtics now being one win away from the NBA Finals. And speaking specifically about last night's Game 5 victory, listen, the best teams win ugly, okay? They win any way they can. They win pretty, they win ugly, they win neutral, right in the middle. And this shows me how well this team is. The fact that they can overcome what was an absolutely horrible start to that game. Yes, it was low scoring the entire way, but it was just not pretty at all. 15 turnovers, which led to 17 Miami points, only 30% from three. It took 4 minutes into the second quarter for the Celtics to score their first points of that quarter, similar to what Miami did in the first quarter of Game 4. But again, overcoming what they did in the first half to have an extremely strong second half. And, this is something that they can work on, obviously. There's always room to improve. But this is something I've said months and months ago, that this is a team that's got to learn to play about 44 minutes of good basketball instead of, 35 or whatever. Instead of playing one good half of basketball, it's a matter of playing 44. But when you can have that sort of, where you're playing good basketball, when you have that sort of stretch of minutes of playing great basketball, that sort of nullifies it. So again, as I say, the best teams win ugly, and that's what they did. Okay. The best teams win it on, their worst nights. You can't win it, but you can't win a championship like that, but you can certainly lose it. And what they did was just basically take it out of the question. They took it out and took out any chance of that possibility happening. That makes, what happened in Game 1 look in the past for right now. Okay. If they can clinch it on their home floor, then that takes everything they did poorly against Milwaukee, everything earlier on in this series against Miami, that puts it in the rear view. And that puts you, if you get out of this series, it puts you, in a totally new season where 4 wins gives you a championship. And obviously health has been absolutely huge. Obviously looking at Marcus Smart missing a game with the sprained foot. Jason Tatum had a little bit of a scare with the stinger, and then Robert Williams being in and out and essentially day to day, just taking care of that knee off of meniscus surgery. But I look at Robert Williams as he's the ultimate X factor in this series. I mentioned it again about Bam Adebayo, but the fact that his presence alone is making the Heat shy away from the paint and getting shots at the rim in general, I think is absolutely huge. He doesn't even have to play phenomenal. He doesn't have to be that lob threat. He doesn't have to be, that big time defender, but just having him in the lineup is getting into the Heat's mind. Obviously it helps that he's chasing down corner threes and blocking them out of bounds and playing strong against, guys like PJ Tucker and Bam Adebayo. So, that helps for the Celtics lineup in general. But I think in this series in general, I think full credit has to go to 2 guys. It has to go to 2 key rotation pieces, and that's Al Horford and Derek White. Okay. Now everyone was saying, Derek White, how are we going to win without him? He had to go leave for the birth of his baby. No panic. There was no panic. It's always next man up. And look what happened. He's got that, quote unquote, new dad energy. And in his last 2 games, he scored a total of 27 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, and 5 steals. This is what the Celtics were expecting when they made that deadline trade with San Antonio. They came in, they expected him to be an incredible 2-way player. And look at what he's done. He's passing the ball very well. He's a strong defender, and he's finally being aggressive. He's not settling. He scored the first 7 points of Game 4 for crying out loud. It was 7-0 Derek White over the Miami Heat. And I think that's what the Celtics were expecting when they made the trade. with Greg Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs, was coming back and bringing an incredible two-way player. Just when he came along in his first in his stint so far with Boston, we haven't seen the offensive side of things. Now he's sort of in a groove, and you heard it in the post game where you hear Tatum, Smart, Brown, Udoka. They're telling him, "Hey, be aggressive, be yourself," because he's a great defender, but the offense was lacking. And now that he's comfortable and he's in a rhythm, I think he's going to be crucial for any kind of long stretch that the Celtics want to have to get to a championship. Is him coming off the bench, filling in for Smart when he has to. And that way the Celtics won't have to lose a step at all. Marcus Smart can still do Marcus Smart things, but when you have a guy in Derek White who can come in at any time and give you that same aggressiveness on both sides of the floor, then you're golden essentially in that lineup. So credit goes to Derek White, and also credit goes to Al Horford. It got amplified in the Milwaukee series when he put up 30 points and was basically stifling the Greek Freak. But in this series, I think he's arguably making his case for best defender on the team. No disrespect for the defensive player of the year to Marcus Smart or to Robert Williams or to Grant Williams, but Horford has been the best defender in the series. Okay. The fact that he's switching on to guys like Jimmy Butler and on to Bam Adebayo, and he's basically made him look like nothing. They made him look like nothing. And on the other side of the floor, the fact of him, off the ball, setting screens, making the right reads, knocking down the key baskets when they have to, I think that's huge for this Celtics team. So I say, I know there's talks about, the conference MVP. Everyone's saying, in the Western Conference, the Magic Johnson Award's got to go to Steph Curry. If you ask me, I think the Eastern Conference Award, which is named after Larry Bird, I think the Larry Bird MVP has to go to Al Horford. That would just be my thing. I know they're going to look at the stats and all that and probably give it to like Jason Tatum or something like that if the Celtics win. But if it were me, I'd be looking at Al Horford saying that guy's just as worthy as Jason Tatum, as Jaylen Brown, as Marcus Smart, as all of those guys. So I think those two guys are so instrumental as to where the Celtics are right now with a 3-2 lead over the Miami Heat. Derek White and Al Horford. And honestly, as I said, this is a team that I think ends this on Friday night. They end it on their home floor. They win it in 6 games. They go to the NBA Finals. And if you ask me, when these pieces are playing at their max potential and they're not having these lulls and these kind of stretch of games where they can't hit the side of a barn and they can actually defend, I think you take those things away and they are the NBA title favorites. I don't want to get too cocky, but, over Golden State or over Dallas, I would favor them, to be totally honest, when they're playing at their potential. Now, can they do that? Well, let's first have them win this Miami series, which, as I said, I think they'll do. Let's see them get to the finals. They'll be able to get some rest. Robert Williams will be able to get that knee healthy. Smart will get his foot healthy. Everyone will hopefully get as healthy as they can be for a highly intense NBA Finals matchup. But as I said, let's see them beat Miami first, and then we can talk about championship expectations. Let's talk about that. But a team that also had championship expectations were the Boston Red Sox, and that's the second and final team in the Boston area that we will talk about, because what a tale of two teams, essentially. I mean, we talk about the Hurricanes being two totally different teams on the road. Let's look at the first probably month of the season, and let's look at the past month of the season. This is a completely different Red Sox team. They have been on fire, and they are now salvaging their season. This was a team that I believe was 10-20 at one point, or like 11-19, something like that. And now here they are coming off of a 6-game winning streak, I should say. Coming off a 6-game winning streak. I know they lost last night to the White Sox, but it was tight. It was tight. 3-1 that loss. But this is a team that is on fire and is salvaging their season. Why? Because Trevor Story is starting to look like Trevor Story. This is the guy that everyone in Boston, in management, and even in the coaching staff expected to get when you signed him for 6 years and $140 million. It took a little while for him to find sort of that momentum, but here he is with 6 home runs in his last 6 games, including an unreal 3 home run and stolen base game against Seattle, which is the first time that's happened at all in franchise history. But when you look at Trevor Story, at least in my eyes, he's similar to Giancarlo Stanton in that type of boom or bust where he's going to give you home runs, he's going to give you power, but he's also going to strike out a lot. So I think it's just Red Sox fans getting used to that kind of player of he's going to boom and he's going to hit for power and he's going to rack up the RBIs, but he's also going to kill you in terms of a bunch of strikeouts. So that's what I see with Trevor Story. He's going to be that key contributor that's going to help out the power lineup. He's going to help out the power in that lineup with Devers, Bogarts, and Martinez. But then everyone else in the lineup, they're starting to be key contributors. And when I say key contributors, that just means they got to get hits and they got to get on base and they got to have timely hits. You know, it's nice at times when you guys like Kike Hernandez and Christian Vasquez going yard and Franchi Cordero hitting a walk-off grand slam, which, by the way, so far in the early parts of the season has been the moment of the year for this Red Sox team. That walk-off grand slam, the fact that Franchi Cordero didn't have a walk-off hit. He had a walk-off grand slam on Sunday afternoon against the Seattle Mariners. Now, granted, the Red Sox shouldn't have been in that at all if Hansel Robles just kept the lead with 2 outs in the 9th and didn't give up a home run to Eugenio Suarez. But regardless, that moment is the moment of the year. So the lineup is starting to find the groove that we saw in previous years. You got your power hitters plus Trevor Story. You got Kike Hernandez, who's starting to heat up. And then you've got other guys like Verdugo, Vasquez, whoever plays first base between Cordero and Dahlbeck, and then Jackie Bradley Jr. They're starting to get timely hits. And it's not necessarily, going yard because they can do that once in a while. But it's just a matter of drawing the walks, getting the singles, getting the doubles, and just getting on base. Because then it eventually leads to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 who will have those power moments. And that's how you score more than 5 runs each game. That was the problem, was that your power hitters were hitting solo home runs and they were getting RBIs at 1 or 2. Now they're getting 3 RBIs. That's what helps on the offensive side of things. For the pitching side of things, Michael Wacha's back in the rotation. He's still looking like Michael Wacha. Nathan Eovaldi threw out that performance against the Astros where he had 5 home runs in an inning. Rich Hill is still giving you 5 good innings of work, even though he did give up that 3-run home run and eventually got the loss in that game. The starting rotation is still pitching well. The problem is the bullpen. The bullpen, as I said last week, with the big time moments where you have to keep the lead close or win the game with a close lead. That's the problem that the bullpen faces. And don't get me wrong, you still got guys who have been playing well, like Jake Diekman. He's played well recently. Other guys like Schreiber, who came up from AAA Worcester, he's been good recently. But in terms of a full stretch of a season, the bullpen has to learn to keep close leads. Keep close leads and keep games in general close. And we haven't seen that so far this season. So you have to look at guys like Davis, like Robles. You're seeing guys like Brazier, who were essentially being called on to be the closer. Now he's down in AAA. That's what I think has to happen with the Boston Red Sox. That's the last thing. And then this team can get back to their winning ways, is the bullpen pitching well in close games. But the good news for the Red Sox is not only is it only May going to be June, because there's still more time left in the season, but they are getting overshadowed by the fact that the Celtics are just that much closer to an NBA championship. Lastly, as we always do to end our show, it's our LOL moment of the week. And we are going back to the NBA Conference Finals because while it is extremely competitive between two teams looking for a berth in the NBA Finals, there's got to be some fun to find in these kind of moments. And the fun comes off of the court. So this week's LOL moment of the week goes to Jalen Brunson from the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the way that he earns a spot is that this was post-game. Game 4, the Mavericks win, and now the series is 3-1. And what happens on Inside the NBA is they'll bring a guy out from the winning team to talk about the victory. And in this case, Brunson was the guy. He was brought up there with Ernie, Kenny, Charles, and Shaq. And it was Barkley who asked the question that led to this moment. Take a look at this.
Well, you had a hell of a series, a hell of a playoff run, but my biggest question is, have you surpassed your dad as the best player?
On, stop that, man. His dad was a passer, not a scorer.
No, but that wasn't even a player compared to me. we'll see him downstairs. We'll tell him.
No, you would have gave it to your dad. That's what you said.
I thought you were taking offense at the question. That how could somebody say that about my dad? And then you doubled down on it.
Yeah, that's offensive.
He took it offensively.
No.
Yes, Jalen Brunson has some fun and says he has surpassed his dad, Rick Brunson, in terms of success. Now, let's just keep this in mind. Jalen Brunson has earned his first conference finals trip. This is a dude who's been, I believe, 2 years in the league. 2 years, 2 playoffs with Dallas. This is the furthest he's been. And obviously, he's a national champion with Villanova. But his dad, Rick, who is a 9-year NBA vet, he says that in his first 2 years of playing basketball in the NBA, he surpassed his dad, who's played 9 years. Come on, Jalen. Come on. I know you're poking fun at your dad, and I know you won a national championship at Villanova, and you're here in the conference finals as arguably the second best player on the Dallas Mavericks. You're going to get a lot of money wherever you sign. But the fact that you're saying you're surpassing your dad already in year 2 or 3, when your dad has already played 9 years, come on, that's ridiculous. You know, I get this is sort of a fun thing for Jalen Brunson. I get it. He's poking fun at his dad. They're probably going to have a laugh about this post-game interview. And I know he was sort of chuckling at that part. And even Kenny was defending Rick Brunson, saying, like, come on, these are 2 different players. So I get that this is sort of going to be a fun question. And I think that's essentially what maybe Barkley was looking for. You know, maybe he was looking for that kind of headline, or maybe he was looking for that funny moment. But come on, this is a dude, Charles Barkley, who basically loves the Dallas Mavericks fans. He hates the Golden State Warriors fans. I mean, come on. Chuck came in on a horse before Game 3. He came in on a horse to the Inside the NBA set. So let's not talk about the fact. Well, let's not argue the point that Charles Barkley is basically in love with the Dallas Mavericks community and their fan base. So there is a reason why he asked if Jalen had surpassed his dad, Rick. So Jalen Brunson, for saying that in year 3, you're already better career-wise than your dad, who spent 9 years in the league, you have earned yourself into this week's LOL Moment of the Week. So that wraps it up once again for another edition of Let Me Speak. Thank you everyone for tuning in wherever you are getting this podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure as always you follow our pages on social media. We got Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All you got to do is search Let Me Speak Podcast. And remember, as always, if you got a point you got to get across, just let the whole world know. Shut up and let me speak.